afternoon. I'm Angela Mills, Chair of the Department of Emergency Medicine for Columbia, New York Presbyterian. I'm delighted to welcome you to our first Dr. Lorna M. Breen Annual Lecture. The musical selection you just heard was In Notte Placida, performed by the Late Starters Orchestra, where Lorna was a member and played the cello. Dr. Lorna Breen was a talented physician and leader who was a distinguished faculty member in our department, serving as medical director of the New York Presbyterian Allen Hospital Emergency Department for a number of years. She epitomized the role of physician-educator and made enduring contributions to the operations and teaching programs of the Department of Emergency Medicine. Dr. Breen dedicated herself throughout her career to continual self-development as a clinician and administrator. She pursued her diverse interests with an enthusiasm, purpose, and intensity that continue to be an inspiration to us today. The Dr. Lorna Breen Annual Lecture series seeks to honor her memory and legacy by inviting similarly successful leaders and promoting many of her passions, including professional development, a love of learning, and an understanding that continued growth is paramount to the success of committed leaders. We have the honor of welcoming two incredible keynote speakers today, in addition to a number of very special guests who will be providing remarks and even salsa music, which Lorna loved to dance. At this time, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, Lorna's home state. He is a lawyer and politician who has served as mayor of Richmond, lieutenant governor of Virginia, and then Virginia's 70th governor in 2006. He has chaired the Democratic National Committee and then was elected to the US Senate in 2012 and serves on the Armed Service, Budget, Foreign Relations, and Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions or HELP committees. Please welcome Senator Kaine.
Well, Dr. Miles, thank you so much. It is a real honor to join you from my office in the Russell Building in the U.S. Capitol Complex, to be together with so many admirers, friends, family of Dr. Lorna Breen, and also those who want to dialogue together and learn together about the issues that mattered so much to her. I especially appreciate Dr. Breen's family, especially Corey and Jennifer Feist, who I believe will speak in a bit. I came to learn about Dr. Breen through public reporting last year. Her story grabbed my heart. We were in Congress grappling with a pandemic that we didn't understand very well, and we were trying to provide assistance to people all over this country. Even in that month of March, when my wife and I both got coronavirus, there was just so much that was unknown. The stresses were so high, but I wasn't a frontline health responder dealing with illness and death every day as Lorna Breen was, and as so many of you have. When I learned about Lorna and her passions and her love for her profession, which had been a lifelong dream, and then I learned about the pressures she was under with COVID, so much unknown, so much changing day to day. And then getting COVID and then returning to work and then finding that she, wasn't yet physically able to do it. And then the accumulated mental stress that led to her death by suicide at the end of April. I just found the story of a healer who was not able to be healed unmistakably tragic. When I met Dr. Breen's family and we started talking about what public policy we might embrace to try to remember her, but also help others who were healers to be healthy in their own professional lives so they could have the staying power to go on and on and on in a very tough time. I did a quick Google search one day on Dr. Breen about her publications, and I saw something that I hadn't seen in any of the public reporting. Dr. Breen was a pretty prolific writer and researcher. Her last published piece, which came out in December of 2019, just months before the onset of COVID in the hospital where she worked, was a piece about burnout among emergency room physicians. When I saw the title of that article and I read it, I just got a cold chill, because before the pandemic, Dr. Breen was aware of the unique challenges that all of you as frontline healthcare workers, and especially emergency room physicians, face. So working together with Dr. Breen's family, we introduced in May of last year a bill, the Dr. Lorna Breen Act, to make sure that we were at least beginning to address the issue of keeping our healers healthy, and to provide resources and strategies that would reduce, certainly not eliminate, but that would reduce burnout and hopefully also reduce the vast, disproportionately high rate of death by suicide among healthcare providers. With the FICE help and Dr. Breen's family and others, we battled through 2019. And finally, at the end of the year, fell a little bit short, but then as part of the American Rescue Plan that we just passed, we were able to receive $140 million of funding for programs to provide mental health assistance, grant programs to invest in best practices to keep our frontline healthcare providers healthy, so they can go on and keep doing the work that is so very, very important. We've obtained that first step as a down payment, but I can tell you that with the Breen Act is supported in both houses of Congress in a very bipartisan way. And now that we've obtained funding, we're on to the next step, which is actually to get the Breen Act passed so that the funding that we have appropriated, can be allocated in the most appropriate way to deal with the mental health needs of our healthcare professionals. I just really want to thank all of you for your tremendous service in the last year. I suspect that many of you will get to the end of your professional lives, and when you're asked what was the most important year of your professional life, you may say that it began in March of 2019. I meet people all over the country. They might be first responders, police, fire. They might be mental health workers, substance abuse counselors, local elected officials. I feel this way somewhat as a legislator, that the work we do every day has the chance to be important, but the work that we've done in the past year has been particularly important. And then the last thing I'll say is I have a particular feeling for you as somebody who has elderly parents, and I've talked to a lot of frontline healthcare providers, nurses and doctors, and they've told me of the challenges not only of providing medical care during this difficult time, but having to manage end-of-life discussions with so many people. Traditionally, healthcare providers might escort family members into a hospital room, and in that hospital room, family members could get a sacred moment of privacy to say goodbyes to a spouse or a parent or a child or a friend or a sibling. So often in a time of COVID, when people haven't been able to visit their loved ones in hospitals, it's been you, emergency room physicians and nurses and other allied health professionals, who have been in that hospital room with a mask and a gown and gloves and holding an iPad in front of someone's face as they're living their last moments and trying to help them say goodbye to their families. And what a difficult thing, what a sacred thing, what a taxing, emotionally draining thing, but what an honorable thing. So in honor of, in memory of Lorna Breen, I'm so happy that I'm just a part of this effort to remember her, and to remember her in a way that really matters. Remember her by passing legislation and investing in programs and resources that will help all of our healers have the ability to stay healthy, and help all of us battle to reduce any stigma that makes it hard for people to come forward and admit that they need help and then get the resources that they need. So to all of you at Columbia, what a great thing that you're doing this annually in honor of Dr. Lorna Breen. And I'm in the vineyard with you and look forward to work to come to continue this recognition of a most remarkable doctor, a most remarkable Virginian, a most remarkable woman.
Thank you, Senator Kane. We're incredibly grateful for you being here with us today for all of your work in the Senate and certainly all of your championing of the Breen Act. So thank you again for being here. Really appreciate that. Now I'm very happy to introduce Congresswoman Susan Wild, who was elected in 2018 as the first woman to represent Pennsylvania's 7th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Representative Wild serves on the House Education and Labor Committee, the House Ethics Committee, and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Please welcome Representative Wild.
Hi, everyone. This is Congresswoman Susan Wild of Pennsylvania's 7th District. I am so honored for the opportunity to join all of you as a part of the first annual Dr. Lorna Breen Memorial Lecture, and to extend my deepest gratitude to Columbia University's Department of Emergency Medicine for creating this annual lecture and for including me today. For more than a year now, newspaper headlines have all echoed a similar theme day in and day out. The coronavirus continues to devastate communities across the world. But now, as millions of people begin to receive the vaccine, the possibility of hope and the promise of a return to normalcy are visible along the horizon. As our country turns a corner, we cannot forget about the millions of people who worked long hours, saved lives, and sacrificed so much over the past year, our nation's heroic healthcare workers. Not until the death of our beloved Dr. Lorna Breen, a celebrated emergency medicine physician at New York Presbyterian Allen Hospital, did we fully understand how dangerous it is to be a doctor in this new era of pandemic. Day in and day out, our healthcare workers face the additional burdens of working with infected patients in the absence of adequate personal protective equipment, the fear of exposing themselves and family members to the virus, the trauma of working in a high-stress environment, overwhelmed facilities, mounting illness and death of patients and colleagues, and additional barriers to care. In fact, long before the pandemic strike, physicians had the highest death rate by suicide of any profession in the country, and as many as 45 to 55% of healthcare workers have suffered from burnout. Last month, I proudly introduced the bipartisan Dr. Lorna Breen Healthcare Provider Protection Act, legislation that aims to reduce the stigma of seeking mental health help and prevent burnout and suicide among healthcare professionals. For far too long, the stoic culture of self-sufficiency has driven treatable health issues underground and prevented scores of professionals from accessing effective treatment that could protect both patient safety and the health and careers of the providers themselves. This bill does exactly that. Again, thank you to Columbia University for hosting this special lecture today. To all of you and everyone who has sacrificed so much to help our nation through this past year, I extend my sincerest thanks. Our nation owes all of you an enormous debt of gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Wild. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Anil Restige and Dr. Laura Faris, who will be providing remarks for our program today. Dr. Anil Restige is Interim Executive Vice President and Dean of the Faculties of Health Sciences and Medicine for Columbia University. Dr. Laura Faris is Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for New York Presbyterian. Drs. Faris and Restige are incredible supporters of emergency medicine and have funded our new fellowship in healthcare administration in Dr. Lorna Breen's name, with our very first fellow joining us in July. Dr. Restige?
Thank you, Dr. Mills and Senator Kane, Congresswoman Wild, and especially to the Breen family and friends. This is a solemn occasion, no doubt, as we remember Dr. Breen's legacy and honor that legacy. And it's just really tremendous that Senator Kane, with his colleagues, has passed this legislation that will help so many people across the country. The emergency department is a perfect reflection of the historic collaborative partnership with between New York Presbyterian, my close colleagues, Dr. Faris and Dr. Corwin, and Columbia University to advance patient care who require emergent and urgent medicine and its applications thereof. And this partnership was best illustrated by Dr. Breen, a legendary physician, educator, mentor, leader, administrator, and humanitarian. And we will forever remember her, but we will always not only honor her, but celebrate her contributions to everything about us, first and foremost patient care, but also everything that allies with patient care, education, teaching, instruction, community relationships, and applied research. So it's truly an honor to work with Dr. Faris and New York Presbyterian to advance the missions of the Breen Lectureship and to always remember her and to treasure her legacy. And thank you again to the Breen family and friends. Dr. Faris.
Thank you, Dr. Ruski. It's a privilege to be here today on behalf of all of New York Presbyterian and comment just on how important Dr. Breen was to all of us. As you've heard from prior speakers, Lorna Breen was critical to what we do every day in taking care of patients. She was a wonderful teacher. She was a wonderful person. And so on behalf of all of New York Presbyterian and with all of our colleagues at Columbia University, we do celebrate her. But I also want to say something personal because I had the privilege of knowing Lorna as a colleague and as a friend, someone that we spent a number of long conversations talking about what it meant to be a physician, to be a leader, to be a woman in medicine, and to be a lifelong learner. And so while it's terrible that Lorna is not here with us today in person, she's surely here with us in spirit. I know how important these discussions, these conversations would be to her, that are to her. And so just as you heard from our prior speakers, we will not forget Dr. Breen. We'll remember her always in our hearts and through all of these ongoing discussions. Thank you all for being here, and a special thank you to Dr. Breen's family. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rostigi, Dr. Faris, for your remarks. Hi, my name is Edsa. I'm one of the emergency physicians here at Columbia, and I have the privilege of being one of the co-chairs for the organizing committee of this lecture series. At this time, it's my honor to introduce to you Pastor Jeff White. Lorna was a faithful member of Redeemer Presbyterian Church, and Pastor White, who actually started a career as a physical therapist before joining the ministry, has known Lorna for many years through the Redeemer downtown service, which he leads. Pastor White will be sharing a few words with us.
Greetings. It is my great pleasure to be with you, and an honor to be with all of you. As Ed mentioned, I was a physical therapist. My wife's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. We are so grateful for all the healthcare professionals in New York City and around the world who have made such a difference in our world and our country during these past deeply hard months. Frederick Buechner, who is an essayist, novelist, a pastor, wrote this. He said, "A saint is a life giver. A saint is a human being with the same sorts of hangups and abysses as the rest of us. But if a saint touches your life, you become alive in a new way." And the saints aren't perfect people. They're not made of plaster. They're just human beings like the rest of us, but who uniquely spend and are spent on behalf of others. And Lorna was such a person. I think anyone who knows her would not argue with that at all. Lorna was certainly a force of nature. And yet it was her faith that profoundly animated her life. It was her faith that gave her a sense that this rich pageant of a world was meant to be jumped in head first. And so her many passions arose out of that, not the least her passion for medicine and giving herself away to others in that venue. But she did it at our church community as well. She was involved in a number of women's groups. And when there were issues that arose in the church where she could make a difference, even though she lived a very busy life, she was very quick to offer herself up. Again, a person who was willing to spend and be spent on behalf of others, who saw the profound dignity and value of every single human being and was glad to be for them in any way she could. During the last few months of Lorna's life, she was, again, part of some women's groups in our church, and they, in those groups, shared passages of scripture with one another that were meaningful to them. Lorna shared 3 particular passages, one of them from the prophet Isaiah, another from Paul's letter to the Philippians, but a final one from Psalm 46, which simply reads like this. God says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." And that was something that Lorna carried with her, a profound sense that God was with her, even through the hardships and the ups and downs and the bewilderments of life, which we all face from time to time. So again, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you, grateful for the fact that this lecture has been begun in Lorna's honor, and pray that just as she gave life to others, that this lecture series for many years will give light and life to others as well. I'd like to offer a short prayer as we begin. Lord our God, we do thank you for the life of Dr. Lorna Breen, the force of nature that she was, the way that she gave life to others. And Lord, we do pray now that this lecture series would, to the many who listen in on it, give light and life to them as well. In your name we ask this, amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor White. Good afternoon. My name is Penny Lima. I'm the Vice Chair of Faculty Affairs for our department and honored to co-chair the planning committee for the Dr. Lorna M. Breen Annual Lecture with Dr. Itza. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Our first keynote speaker is Dr. Carol Cunningham. Dr. Cunningham is the appointed State Medical Director for the Ohio Department of Public Safety, Division of EMS. She is a board-certified emergency physician at Cleveland Clinic, Akron Medical General Center. Among her numerous leadership roles, Dr. Cunningham most notably completed 2 terms on the National EMS Advisory Council and is a member of the Department of Homeland Security's Science and Technology Directorate's First Responder Resource Group and the Board of Directors of the Committee for Tactical Emergency Care. Dr. Cunningham has paved the way for many in emergency medicine and EMS. She is on the Board of Trustees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum. She is an inspiration, one of the most interesting faculty in emergency medicine today. We are fortunate to have her speak to us this afternoon. Welcome, Mother Maynard, Dr. Cunningham.
Thank you, Penelope. It's a huge honor to have been invited to contribute to this event. As I spoke with everyone at Columbia, not having actually met Dr. Breen, I saw so many common threads. First of all, I can't tell you how you feel. I can share your pain. I lost one of my residency colleagues to suicide this fall, and one of my EMS providers to the same on Easter Sunday. I know Penelope wanted me to talk about how the challenges I had and the things that I would advise people on my route to where I am. So I will tell you some personal things. First of all, I love music, as Penelope has said, as much as I love medicine. But I do hope that throughout the rest of your lives, you remember Lorna as she is. I never met her, but having heard everything about her, I could never, ever speak of her in the past tense. Lorna is still here. Her legacy is still here. All of the work that she's done is continuing. In terms of creating leaders, everybody has a foundation. For me, it was my father. I'm biased, but to me, he was like the greatest mortal man that ever walked the planet. And we had literally the closest father-daughter relationship ever. He taught me really everything that I knew, except for two things, and that's how to say or how to think I can't. I'm giving away my age, but I was born into this country before the Civil Rights Act passed. So everything that I do is really a dream come true, truthfully. My dad was an Army vet, and he always told me that public service is the greatest thing that one can do. It doesn't pay a lot of money, and often it doesn't pay anything. However, the rewards are priceless to humanity and worth much more than the gold coins that could ever be in your pocket. I also feel like I had some great mentorship. When I started in medical school, emergency medicine was a relatively new specialty. There were literally no women in the field, or very few. And in fact, when I started my internship, even though we had a new emergency department, they didn't really know what to do with a rock and roll girl with 3 earrings in each ear from Cleveland, Ohio. But my locker was in the men's bathroom because they never outfitted it for female physicians. I'm in EMS now, which is also fairly male dominated. And I still feel like my dad taught me it doesn't really matter. Just go out there, follow your dreams. I never really had any boundaries. If there's anything that any idea that I had, he always supported me. When it comes to being a leader, there are certain qualities that I think everyone should embrace. They're kind of my pearls of wisdom, but they kind of apply to life in general. First of all, you need to know yourself and don't give up your hobbies. We are physicians, we are healthcare workers, but first we are people. Music has been a huge part of my life. I grew up blue collar and actually paid for school playing in various jazz bands and rock and roll bands. But I've never given that up. Music truly is my fuel. And when I heard that Lorna plays the cello, I thought that was fantastic. And then I also heard that she loves salsa, which is certainly a celebratory type of music. And I'm sure she probably danced at home after a shift from work, just like I do. In terms of managing your schedules, I think first of all, it should be people first. If you address the immediate needs of others, everything else on your itinerary kind of falls into place. I have a personal mantra, which is never rest your laurels at the feet of mediocrity. When you've accomplished something, I still go back like a football reel and look at it again and try and make it better. I think following the herd is kind of a sure path to mediocrity. So there's a lot of things that I've done where people will say, gosh, she was the first person that did that. And there's been several things in my career. I've been either the first woman or the first minority or whatever, but I let that roll off my shoulders. Because my dad always told me it's really not being the first of anything. Whatever you do, just strive to be the best. And that's what I tried to do. I'm the first Black state medical director ever appointed in the nation's history. And a year following that, Dr. Bruce Grooms, who not Dr. Bruce Grooms, but Bruce Grooms, he's a vice admiral in the Navy, became the first Black commandant of the Naval Academy. And he and I grew up together. We played on the playground together. And I wrote him a congratulatory letter, and he wrote me back, and we both agreed. You know, the media will focus on your gender or your race, but our goal is really just to be the best. I also think that, and what I gather from hearing from Lorna, it's very important to be the voice of the voiceless. Oftentimes, those who have nothing, or those who are just new in the field, or maybe the quiet ones in the room, feel like they don't have a voice. I like to go out and talk to providers working in the field. And oftentimes the best ideas come from someone who is new in the business, or maybe less experienced, because they've got opened eyes and they're not really biased by what they have seen. And then I think an important thing is to also realize that everybody has a bad day, but out of darkness, the light always emerges. If you have something that you consider as a failure, it's really an opportunity. It's an opportunity to relook at things, to overcome a challenge. And some of the failures I've had in my life are devastating, but beyond the tears, I can see the light, and there's going to be a shiny day ahead of that. When you go into a patient's room, and it doesn't even have to be a patient, it could be someone that you're working with in the community. Always remember that everybody is somebody's baby. When I teach residents, and I always tell them, I don't care if they're cussing at you, I don't care if they've got stinky feet, just go ahead and remember that everybody's somebody's baby, and that you should deliver the same kind of care and respect to them as you would your own family member. Having played in bands, it's a great experience. It's almost like being in the military. You learn about the we instead of the me. But that really builds a foundation for you to know the importance of teamwork. When I think about the most impactful things that I've done in my career, I didn't do them. It took a village of people to create a team and really put something wonderful together. And then my dad really stressed the importance of mentorship. And I feel like my dad's no longer physically here, he's always here in spirit, but I feel like I'm a conduit of him. He was the type of person who would give you his shirt off give you the shirt off of his back, even if he had nothing. He grew up in poverty, in a family of 15 and a 3-bedroom dirt floor house in Alabama. Yet all of the family members, his brothers and sisters, stuck together. They went to the military, and they all had college degrees, which is literally unheard of, especially during the time that he grew up. I can honestly say that the day that I was appointed state medical director was probably the happiest day of his life. It was a dream, but a dream come true for him. But again, to me, it was more of a challenge to create an opportunity for future women to also be able to have that experience. My dad described it as the end of the race, whether it's through death, retirement, or just leaving the profession. Everybody has to pass the baton on to the next person. So if you pass it down, that means you spent your career focused on yourself. If you pass it across, you just really didn't do too much. But if you put a lot of time into mentorship, you'll have the blessing of being able to pass the baton upward to the next individual. And dreams do come true. I started a scholarship first endowed scholarship at my high school. And, you know, you have to give back. My impetus was the first time I was ever invited to the White House. Yeah, I'm a blue collar kid from Maple Heights, Ohio. How did I ever end up in the White House? But on the way home, I realized that it was the knowledge of the science, the ability to communicate, and the love of music, which gives me balance. So when I created this scholarship, I didn't name it after myself. It was named after my favorite science teacher, my English teacher, and my music teacher. And it's so wonderful to get letters from students who have been granted that opportunity. I've had a lot of dreams, amazing dreams that come true that I really only have 2 things left on my bucket list. But I never dreamed I'd be in a conference here with Judy Tintinelli. I mean, she's amazing, much more amazing than I'll ever be. The other quote that I always have in my office is from Maya Angelou. And that is, my mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. So when you're in my office, I'm Carol, and I'm Carol with the music on. That's how my staff knows when I'm in the office. And I also think that we have to remind ourselves, particularly those of us who are the first to do whatever, that you cannot be content with just being the first. Your only goal should be the best. When you shatter a glass ceiling, it really only has value if you bring enough sunlight in through that hole in the sky that's now created to bring enough sufficient light, a guiding light to the path for others that are going to follow you. And you want to illuminate all those areas of path so that if someone's coming along, they want to create a different path, they have the light to do so. You know, mentorship is just my passion. I still go to career days. There's nothing better than seeing the light in someone's eye, especially when I go to the elementary schools, when they listen to a human heartbeat for the first time with the stethoscope. It's just amazing. And it's similar to the same light I've seen in my godchildren when they were young, when I took them to their first music class. One of my favorite pictures is my youngest goddaughter, who I took her to her first music class when she was 18 months old or 17 months old, and she was holding a set of miniature maracas, just shaking them. And I treasure that. She grew up to be a cellist, but I always remind her that, you know, I had her all set up to be Santana's backup percussionist, but she had to go pick up the cello. But that's okay. We want to make sure our next generation is open-minded, independent, and happy. And as I mentioned before, I will never, ever mention Lorna in the past tense. Lorna is still with us. When I speak with all the people, including yourselves, who have benefited from her contributions, all the patients who have benefited from her contributions, she's still here. And it's our job to carry that torch and carry that light and celebrate Lorna as we will, with music, with living life to the fullest, and helping everyone who needs assistance, regardless of their ability to reimburse us, to thank us. We do it because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. So inspirational. So we have a few questions here. How can EMS and healthcare personnel be supported in the wake of the pandemic?
There's several things. Number one, get involved. I've been a presenter 4 times and I'm a frequent panelist with Project ECHO, which is sponsored by Project Ecto based in New Mexico, as well as Dr. Richard Hunt, who's the Senior Medical Advisor for DHHS, and Dr. John Kramer, who's the Director of NHTSA's Office of EMS. It's open dialogue, and it's amazing how many different ideas that we have gone through. First of all, realize that you know, they want to go home too, so, and they're under the same kind of stressors. I think that we have tried to reduce some of the stress that they have by number one, recognizing it, two, changing shift loads, as well as just working to support them. Here in Ohio, we put out several public safety videos to educate the community, but also to encourage EMS to get vaccinated. In terms of mental health, Project ECHO actually asked me to do a webinar on physician suicide. And it was really close to when my fellow resident and dear friend succumbed to suicide. And I wasn't quite emotionally ready to do it, but I did it anyway, even though it's probably the first time I ever cried on an international webinar, but that's what you should do, is cry. But I felt like if I waited till I was stronger, there would be more lives lost. And one of the things that we have to realize is that government and these kind of initiatives need to be funded. They need to be funded with, but to fund them, we need data. And the one thing that is lacking is the fact that when we bill for COVID, what we know is COVID-related stress, there's no billing code for that now. If you have a pulmonary embolism as a result of COVID, that's considered a complication. If you have stress or anxiety or depression or suicidal thoughts secondary to COVID, there's no way to log that. And I use the comparison. My first EMS provider that passed away actually early in the pandemic was from the complications of COVID. And my colleague, they both served the community to the fullest. They both loved what they did. As far as I'm concerned, they both died from COVID complications, but one, because of what's on the death certificate, is counted. Yet my friend, who clearly was stressed from COVID, is a ghost in the machine in terms of CMS billing, and that has to change.
Thank you. Now, somebody asked, you mentioned the first time you were at the White House. Some of us have gone there once as a tourist. How many times have you been to the White House, and who have you worked with?
I've been there several times, mostly for my duties with Homeland Security. And then I did a presentation to the National Security Council. Because it's that, I can't really give you the details on the meeting. But it doesn't get old. I've met and had my picture taken with two presidents. My dream president, that's on my bucket list. But when someone like me who really came up from nothing, when you meet the president of the United States, to me that just and I've never registered for any political party, but it shows the opportunity that's here in America. The country's not perfect, but again, there's that opportunity. And then when you meet the president, it's amazing. I was a disc jockey at Cleveland's #2 rock and roll station before I went to medicine, and you learn that people are just people. Rock stars have marital problems. They're normal people, except they can't go to Target, without creating a mob. And same thing, when you sit down and have a conversation with the president, he's a person too. So you still pinch yourself when you walk out of the room, but I think I learned then, everybody's a person, and you can just talk to them. And I think they appreciate that more than you being kind of stargazer.
And then I'm looking at the chat. There's a shout out from Louise Andrew to you. She says, great to see you, Carol. And
from who?
From Louise Andrew.
Oh, yeah. Hello.
And it was written that Lorna feared licensure and credentialing repercussions because of her help seeking for mental illness. And somebody else asked in a similar like question, what broader system level changes do you think we should consider to support clinicians and healthcare workers regarding mental health?
Well, first of all, as medical professionals and even as a society, we need to stop stigmatizing mental health. It's an illness just like any type of physical, medical or surgical illness. Although I must say that EMS and emergency medicine, we're in a special environment. It would be great if we had special avenues or special areas of treatment. First of all, there's people are going to be reluctant to seek treatment because they don't want to risk their privacy, and two, they may not want to be, if they need to be admitted, be on the same ward as a patient that they've seen who's been admitted. And lastly, I think too, in emergency medicine, we see things that people aren't supposed to see. So I use an example. I've been involved in a couple of active shooter incidents, and just being on the committee on tactical emergency casualty care, we're really a close-knit society, and when an event like that happens, you're on the phone talking to your friend. A real dear friend of mine, Rich Kamen, who's my counterpart in Connecticut, was the guy that opened up the closet at Sandy Hook. And, I'll never disclose the private conversations we have, but, if I got a need to cry or I've seen something really bad, we know we can talk to each other and talk to each other honestly. And then secondly, I think we need to, and it starts really at the student level when you're in medical school. I've seen too many physicians give up themselves. We're physicians, that's our career, but we are still people. And I see a lot of docs that give up their hobbies. I love music, I love teddy bears, I'm not gonna give them up. And I'm at the end of the day, the beginning of the day and the end of the day, I'm Carol, a blue collar kid from Maple Heights, Ohio, and I never want to lose that. And I also think that it's important to keep your original circle of friends. A lot of the people I hang out with were in my kindergarten class. They're not physicians. I have my physician friends, but the majority of my friends do other things. I have a lot of musician friends, thank God. Because even on a bad day, you can sing a song.
And on that note, there are a lot of people who have asked, which one musician has left you starstruck?
Wow. I hate to say not too many, because again, I like them love them as people. I would say, well, the one person I did cut organic chemistry class when I was in college to interview was Michael McDonald, who's a sweetheart. He's a sweetheart. I'm trying to think. I don't know, because I don't know, I have a different lifestyle. Like if someone comes into town, I'm usually gonna be invited to take them out to dinner. I do miss, but then, they become your friends. Mary Wilson and I had a great relationship, and it broke my heart that she passed away. But, we went out for a great dinner downtown when she was in town. And as we were leaving, after having probably a little bit too much champagne, we were singing Stop in the Name of Love. And a homeless guy was sleeping on the street, and he wakes up, he goes, "You girls are good. You sound just like the Supremes." Not even realize he was talking to one of the Supremes. So again, I think, I don't know. To me, people are people. They're people first. And I would much rather build a relationship with someone than to have an autograph or a picture. I mean, those are nice, but I'd rather consider them a friend.
Well, thank you so much for your time and really enriching us today. I'm going to end this by reading something from Dr. Morano. Carol, thank you so much for that beautiful message. You have had such a rich life and you're an inspiration to all of us. And I think that just says it all.
Thank you. And I'm Maynard's mom, my favorite teddy bear's
Maynard's
mom.
mom.
That's important.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Cunningham, for that. That was really great. I'd like to introduce now Jennifer Breen Feist and Corey Feist, one of Lorna's sisters and brother-in-law. Jennifer is an attorney who has served as the treasurer for the Central Virginia chapter of Girls on the Run, is co-founder of a nonprofit, Women United, which is dedicated to supporting causes for the benefit of women and children. Corey has a background in both law and business and is the chief executive officer of the University of Virginia Physicians Group, which is the medical practice group of UVA Health. And he's also chair of the board of the Charlottesville Free Clinic, and he works as adjunct faculty at the UVA Darden School of Business. As many of you already know, they have over the past year launched and led the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, an organization that's focused on reducing burnout in the healthcare professionals and safeguarding their well-being and job satisfaction. All of us who are in healthcare really owe them a debt of gratitude for what they are doing, and I look forward to hearing them share about some of their work with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. It's nice to see you. I'm Jennifer Feist. I'm Lorna's sister. And there are so many of you to thank. I appreciate you putting this together. Thank you to Angela Mills, Edsa, and Penny Lima, Pastor White, who I've never actually seen. I've talked to you, but never seen. And of course, Senator Kane and Congresswoman Wild, as well as the guest speakers. I made a sneaky little trip up to New York City a few days ago, and I was in my sister's apartment. And when I was there, I immediately went to one of my favorite places in any person's house. I like to see what people read. I was looking at her bookshelf, and there were as many medical books as you would expect to see on a doctor's bookshelf. Lots of books on how to speak medical Spanish, and many volumes addressing various matters related to Christianity. And there was one Dr. Seuss book. I remember the book because I gave it to Lorna when she graduated from Cornell in 1992. And it's a common graduation gift entitled, "Oh, the Places You'll Go" by Dr. Seuss. I think this story is pretty well known. It's a pretty common graduation gift. But for those who don't know the story, it's a short story told in child's prose about the things somebody might do with her life, all the successes she will encounter, and some of the pitfalls she also might find. And my favorite line of the book, which is written in all caps, is, "Kid, you'll move mountains." I believe that by telling the story of my sister Lorna, her incredible life, and our incredible loss, we have been able to move mountains in her honor. And we continue to do this work in honor of thousands and millions of other healthcare providers who continue to work every day in our communities. In the past year, Corey and I have heard from, so many corners of the healthcare industry, I didn't even realize they all existed. We've heard from people working on therapy and peer support programs in medicine, to people who are tackling the inconsistency of licensing and credentialing laws throughout the United States. We have found the support of incredible legislators, healthcare providers, and industry leaders. Corey and I have also had the honor and privilege of meeting with several families of healthcare providers who have lost a loved one to suicide. Interestingly, there are some recurring themes. These are gifted healthcare providers who have struggled for one reason or another, some whose experience just started during COVID, like my sister, and some who struggled for longer, but all had a common theme, which was their dismay of their loved ones about the lack of support or the recognition that our healthcare providers are human. Fortunately, we have also heard from people who have either heard the story of my sister Lorna or who have heard the increasingly common drumbeat about the importance of mental health care in the healthcare industry. People who were struggling, but who pressed pause to recognize their own needs and their own humanity. And we are so incredibly grateful for those stories because they tell us that change is possible. So with that, I will pass the conversation over to my husband, Corey, co-founder of the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, and he can tell you more about the mountains we are all moving in the healthcare industry.
I want to echo Jennifer's thanks to the remarkable group of individuals who've already presented this evening, and thanks for having us. And thanks to Angela and the team for all of your incredible help. It was just this time last year, it was really remarkable. It's been quite a journey for this last year. Our work has really started after the news became public of Lorna's passing, when we heard what I described multiple times as a cry for help from many healthcare professionals, not just in the United States, but around the country and around the world. And it occurred to us that Lorna cared so deeply about her colleagues and their well-being that we needed to honor her by continuing to follow that cry for help and answer that cry. And I think it's important for you to note, and this is what Jennifer was saying, is that we did this work in Lorna's honor, but not for Lorna. We're dedicating this work to all of you, the hundreds, if not thousands, of healthcare professionals who take care of patients every single day. For our foundation, we envision a world where seeking and receiving mental health services is universally viewed as a strength. So in response to this cry for help, thousands came at us, and we were able to organize our work into really three main areas. And I'm really excited to share with you the most recent chapter, which launched at 1 o'clock today, of our work. So the first thing that we started to do is we just started to talk about this. What we learned was that when the unspeakable happens to you and you speak about it, it gives others permission to speak. So just having these conversations, as Jennifer suggested, we heard from many people to keep going, that they needed to help, they needed help. And one of the best ways that we could do it was just to shine the light on the conversation and just name it. We've written now over 6 national publications, both in academic journals as well as in the common media. We've done numerous media interviews, tons and tons, in both in print and in video. And by our calculations and that of our public relations firm, we've now reached over 65 million people with our message. In fact, in honor of Lorna's first anniversary on Monday, we'll be on the Today Show at about 8 a.m. Tune in and watch us with Savannah Guthrie, because we want to mark that day and to honor you all as well in this work. So in addition to this awareness work, speaking with medical students and nursing students and on panels on this discussion, as well as the media, we've spent a tremendous amount of time in the advocacy arena. You've heard from 2 amazing people, Senator Kaine and Congresswoman Wild. I can't tell you enough how amazing it has been to interact with those individuals, to work with their teams and really help navigate this process. And the fact that we got $140 million allocated in the American Rescue Plan, new money for a new law in less than 12 months since the inception of the introduction, it's remarkable. And it's a testament to you all, and it's a testament to the need that exists and the lack of attention that this issue has received. So one thing you can do, the act still has to pass, just so you know. The money's there, but we need the language, as Senator Kaine said. So if you go to our website, drlornabreen.org, you can click on a link to take action and send a letter to your member of Congress to say, please vote for this bill and please move it. We've just learned actually on the 28th of this month, Jennifer will be submitting testimony to the Senate Health Committee where they start to talk about the bill. So we really need a lot of support, and we know that Columbia has been right there with us in that effort, and we would love your support. On the state level, we've been working diligently on identifying the state licensure laws. Now, what we've learned is both for physicians and for nurses, there is this regulatory reinforcement of stigma, if you will, and that there are these questions around your past mental health conditions. And sadly, as has already been mentioned, Lorna articulated this concern after she received formal medical attention or mental health attention. And tragically, New York State is, in this case, New York State was a state where she didn't have those concerns, but the stigma was so deep that she didn't believe that the state laws were actually favorable for her. So she was incorrect about that assumption. And it's important for us to share the news about what the current states, what the state's licensure laws are, and then work to change them. We're working with the American Medical Women's Association and many partners that they've pulled together, and actually we'll be sharing the map of our work on the Today Show on Monday, which is really exciting. So now to the most recent work that we've just launched today at 1 o'clock. Partnering with the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, Thrive Global Corporation, and the Creative Artists Agency, the world's largest talent agency, in collaboration with the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, the American Nursing Foundation, and the Schwartz Center for Compassionate Care. Today, we launched a nationwide call to action for every single healthcare leader in this country to prioritize the well-being of the workforce. You all on this call are in the healthcare field, so I don't need to tell anyone about the triple aim, but I will. What you know about the triple aim in healthcare is it's patient-focused. It's about increasing patient access. It's about delivering the highest quality of care at the lowest possible price. Well, today we launched all-in well-being first for healthcare because we are recognizing that before you can get to the triple aim, you've got to have the well-being of the workforce in mind. So many have heard about the quadruple aim. Well, that's it. And this comes first, and your well-being comes first. Our campaign is a critical step in bringing together healthcare leaders from across the industry to design a workplace where you all can feel valued and you can sustain your sense of purpose and meaning in your work. We are so incredibly grateful to share this news with you today. For those who are interested in it, it's on our website under news and events. We've just launched today, and we would encourage everyone on this call to encourage your institutions to join us in this effort. We'll be creating a marketplace, a resilience marketplace for hospitals and health systems to be able to access. We'll be creating fund to help them fund their work. But this is a big step forward, and we're really, really excited about launching that campaign earlier today. And finally, none of this work can be done without your support. So next week, we will be also launching our annual fund. We would encourage and ask for your help in spreading that word. All of those funds are going to a good cause, and we would just greatly appreciate you helping to share that with us in terms of just sharing with your friends, family, whomever. Help us keep the work going. We've made a heck of an impact in our first year, and we want to keep this work going. So Ed, I'm going to pass it back to you. I also want to thank you, sir, for taking over the reins for Dr. Breen this year. Those are big shoes to fill. I'm very familiar with them, and I'm hearing you're doing a great job. So thank you, sir. And thanks to Angela and the team for having us today.
Jennifer and Corey, a very big thank you. I think there just aren't enough words to express our incredible gratitude for all the work that you've been doing this year, and we know how much it'll benefit all healthcare workers. So again, a big thank you, and thank you for being here with us today. Also want to say a big thank you to Dr. Cunningham for that really inspiring talk. I'm very happy now to introduce our next keynote speaker, Dr. Judith Tintinelli, Emeritus Professor and Founding Chair of the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, from 1991 to 2007. Dr. Titnally was president of the American Board of Emergency Medicine from 1989 to 1990, the founding president of the Council of Emergency Medicine Residency Directors, or CORD, and the chair of the Liaison Residency Committee, which was the forerunner of the ACGME-sponsored Residency Review Committee, as well as past president of the Association of Academic Chairs of Emergency Medicine. Dr. Titnally serves as editor-in-chief of the world's largest selling emergency medicine textbook, Titnally's Emergency Medicine, now in its 9th edition. She was a board member and deputy editor of Annals of Emergency Medicine and is editor-in-chief of accessemergencymedicine.com, digital library for emergency medicine, as well as editor-in-chief of Emergency Physicians Monthly. For her accomplishments, Dr. Titnally was elected to the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine and has received numerous awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award from the University of North Carolina Academy of Educators, the Janice A. Wackler Educator of the Year Award, and the American College of Emergency Physicians named one of the Society's key leadership awards, the Judith E. Titnally Award for Outstanding Contribution in Education. Please help me welcome Dr. Titnally. She's going to start by giving some opening remarks, and then we're going to have a fireside chat. And please also enter any questions you may have for her in the Q&A.
Well, thank you, Angela. That introduction was far, far too long. I appreciate the invitation, and I was very influenced and impacted by the discussions of everyone who spoke before, especially to hear what Corey and Jennifer have accomplished already. We're here really today to pay tribute to Dr. Lorna Breen, to her spirit, to her energy, to her compassion, to her steadfastness, and to her leadership. And her story and the stories that others have given us today are very important because we can learn from them, and we need to emulate her vision for the future. So this is a very important talk, and Angela, thank you for starting this lectureship, and we hope it will go on for a long time.
Thank you. Maybe we could start off by having you share a little bit about your leadership pathway.
My leadership pathway was unplanned. I think I'm sort of a starter-upper, and as I saw open spaces within emergency medicine, if I thought it was a job I could do and it interested me and I had the capabilities and friends to support me, I just took them on. And as you know, emergency medicine is, and I'm sure always will be, is very welcoming to anyone who wants to contribute to the jobs that we have to do, regardless of the organization that you're with. So it was very easy to find a lot of things to do. I will tell you the story of the textbook, which is now named, of course, after my name. There was actually an ad in JSEP looking for someone to write a textbook to put together a lot of information about emergency medicine that everyone could study for the boards. I answered the ad and I got the job.
That's amazing. I love that. That's great. So Dr. Breen greatly valued mentorship and sponsorship for leadership development and advancement. Who has had a tremendous impact on you as a leader and why?
I'm going to start by talking about small things, and I'll end by talking about big things and big mentors. One of the most important things that would continue to happen to me was as I accomplished something or did a good job, maybe a small job, maybe working on a committee for Michigan ACEP, could be very small. I would get every once in a while a letter, a card, a call from someone that said, hey, you did a good job. Wow, those kinds of small things make such a difference in terms of one's self-confidence. And you feel like, ooh, I didn't know that anybody noticed. I didn't know I did a good job. Those kinds of small things are very important for us as leaders. You see someone or work with someone who does a good job. It could be a clerk. It could be an environmental associate at your hospital. It could be a medical student that everybody says, this person isn't, be careful, this person is not good. Just say something good to them. It's going to stick with them longer than you can imagine. So those little things made a very big, important impact on me. My big mentor, however, was a man named Ronald Crome, who truly was one of the handful of founders of emergency medicine in the United States. He was the chief of emergency medicine at Detroit Receiving Hospital, which is where I interned. And you walked into the ER, if you would ever see Ron, it was like, his charisma and his energy attracted you to the specialty, to the environment of the emergency. It wasn't just me. He's mentored he had mentored many people throughout his career. And as a matter of fact, at least 2 of my classmates similarly rose to prominence in emergency medicine. Brooks Bach was my classmate. He was president of ACEP. Hal Jane was my classmate. He had a son born on the same day as my daughter, an internship. AEM has an award named after Hal Jane now. So Ron was able to really attract a lot of people with locally, nationally, and even internationally about emergency medicine.
Thank you. Where have you found inspiration and creativity in all of your leadership roles?
One and listening. You know, at the very beginning, I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been a man named John Rupke at Michigan ACEP, who gave me a copy of Robert's Rules of Orders. And he said, you memorize this book. This is how you run meetings. I watched how everyone ran meetings. I looked at their behaviors in private when they would talk personal conversations, as well as in public, and I tried to emulate them. This is why you always have to be on your toes. People are going to be watching you, watching how you do things, how you get along. I also try to read very widely, certainly in medicine, which is something for the rest of my life. I'll be reading as long as I can see the fine print. But I also read very widely literature, blogs, different journals, definitely areas outside of medicine, because that's where you get a lot of ideas, a lot of creativity. When I started out the department at the University of North Carolina, I remember coming back from one day I think it was at Walmart, and I'm like, oh, all these people have walkie-talkies. This is how they communicate throughout a large environment. And of course, this was a long time ago, but you can look at other environments and see what they're doing and translate that to the emergency department.
Yeah, that's so true. I think there's so many of those real life scenarios that we can bring to the ED in so many ways. As a chair emeritus and a national leader, what was one of the most challenging situations that you've had to face, and how did you work through that challenge?
You've got to remember that I grew up in medicine. At a time, I always thought of some of the early leaders are being like a serrated knife. Had to start out being very aggressive, very challenging. Don't let anybody step on your toes. Take advantage, run the situation for sure. And I carried that with me. Boy, have I learned, because over time, even in emergency medicine, our own leaders are not nearly so aggressive, challenging as we were there at the beginning. So I had to unlearn a lot of lessons that I started out with. I thought to be an ER doc, ooh, I've got to be really, really tough. And I can be tough, but you certainly have to modulate that in time. I can't say I have mastered compromise very well, but it took me a long time to realize toning down often gets you a lot farther. It's like the old Aesop fairy tale. When the wind is trying to blow off a cloak of one of the characters in the cold, and he holds onto the cloak tighter, but the sun comes out and is home and makes you hot, and you take your cloak off. So I had a lot to learn.
We had a question in the Q&A that said, you're one of the few people I know of our generation who has successfully launched a child into medicine, let alone EM. How did you manage to infuse hope for the profession in her?
Oh my goodness, my dear sweet Anne. You know, we talk doctor talk every day. I don't know, you know, when she was 13 years old, she did, maybe I shouldn't say this on, you know, what's being recorded. She actually helped doing some of the billing in our department. So she sort of grew up with emergency medicine. She by the way, completed her pre-med degrees at Columbia and then went to Kings County. I'm just so proud of her. We have a family now of 5 adult children. She's the only doctor, but everybody's doing something very valuable, helpful, and committed to the work they're doing. I saw the notes from Manish.
Oh, great. Yeah, maybe I need to up the game for my my 2 teenage boys. They need to come in and do some work. So. What has surprised you most in your leadership positions, and what have you learned from these surprises?
Well, what surprised me most is once you move, well, first of all, nothing surprises me in emergency medicine. It's a great specialty. It's very open. And I would say the surprises have come to me in institutional practice, probably, where, first of all, if you come from an outside institution and you've not grown up in it, it makes a difference. So I moved from Michigan to North Carolina. I was really welcomed. That was a big surprise. The chief of surgery was so welcome to me. What I learned is don't have preconceived notions about how you will relate to people. Because at that time, emergency medicine and surgery fought everywhere. But not at UNC. I would go for a drink every Friday with the chief of surgery. And I'm like, George, how do you do this budget stuff? I had actually taken a short course in the MBA program, but not a degree program, for a month only. And he pulled out his stuff. He's like, these are all numbers. You get these people, they help you out. Don't worry about it. So that was a surprise. But the other surprise was that when you come from an outside institution, you miss the opportunity of actually growing up in the same town, of having your kids go to the same school. And so you can't have the same kind of relationships with certain levels in the administration when you are an outsider. So that surprised me. And those things really never changed that much. Everybody's got their own little silo, and it's still kind of hard to break that down and talk openly.
Yeah, it's very true. I think that's one of the major challenges of medicine, and how do we overcome that? We certainly have had a challenge.
Overcome that, excuse me, Angela, you overcome that by intermarriage. I remember we were having well, whatever, day-to-day difficulties. And suddenly one of our ER male residents got engaged to a woman, female surgery resident. Like, whew, there were never any bad words ever again. The same thing happened with radiology. Well, remember intermarriage.
We'll have to do some matchmaking, I guess. We've certainly had a challenging past year, in this pandemic and all the events that have taken place really throughout the world. Are there other memorable events that you can share with us that occurred during your career that were formidable?
Well, the stresses of COVID among my friends, faculty, and having to deal with friends and family had to homeschool their kids, suddenly couldn't eat out in restaurants anymore. That brought mind to me all the stresses that I had as a beginning emergency physician and faculty member with 3 young children. It was just so stressful, so difficult. You're always worried, is childcare going to come? Are you going to have illness? I have to be on time for a shift. I remember once my shift, there were too many sick people and I had to ask my resident to go pick up my daughter from her daycare center. So that brought back all of those memories. With COVID, of course, due to basically my age, I sort of was not on the first line clinical role anymore with COVID. But I did telemedicine. I had a Suboxone license, which I got very early on, and started doing Suboxone intake with the psychiatry department. That was another open space. I thought, well, I know we've got this program, and I'm one of the few people who had an open X license. So I started doing the Suboxone intake, and that was very enlightening. And what we think about individuals when we read in the newspapers, the news media about individuals who are substance abusers, it's very, very different once you listen to their backgrounds and just what has happened in their lives to make them turn towards substances, to at least take the edge off of life. So that was a big game changer for me in terms of my own perceptions and what I felt I could do for people.
Yeah, very significant, and obviously still remains incredibly important for all of us to think about in our patient care. Great question we got. If you wanted to improve the health of our profession and you had a magic wand to change one major thing about how we practice emergency medicine, what would you focus on?
Oh, I would have to think about that one. One thing I could change for our practice. I can't answer that directly. I'll answer that indirectly because I think emergency medicine is now facing a tsunami that has been 30 years in the making. I saw Bob McNamara on one of the questions, so maybe he's still in the audience. But it sort of began with Bob McNamara. Nobody listened to him much. And there are little and growing concerns about what is going to happen in emergency medicine. What is our practice going to be like? What are health economics going to be like? And how is that going to affect us as a city? So what we have to do now is gather forces, work together, as we've recently seen, just released a very big position paper as to the kinds of things we need to do right now to continue to make emergency medicine the very best specialty there is. There isn't one thing. It's like a giant bunch of Venn diagrams where everything is working together to make the medicine much more complicated now than it ever was, at least to my perception. How we do this is we have to make sure in our medical students and our residents that we teach in them and inspire them to remain committed and active to the specialty throughout their careers. Pay your dues, join the important organizations, do what you can to be active in your department. Stay active, but do things that are compatible with your professional and personal lives. Not everyone is going to go on and be a chairman of a department or a residency program director, but do what you can to stay involved. That is, I think, the major thing that we need to do for the future of emergency medicine. And also remember that other specialties are under stresses now as well. And we need to work together as a group. You saw a note by Louise Andrews, who is active in the AMA. And we need to work together so that all of us can work to improve the administration of healthcare and the healthcare of the population. Sure, we can expand emergency medicine, get fellowships, we can do telemedicine. Don't kid yourself. Other specialists, internists and family medicine are looking for the same. So we sort of lost the bus because of we'd let the tsunami drive us in. We got to get back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's exactly the key, is that we all need to come together and work together, especially nationally, to really look at the things and exactly make emergency medicine the very best. So Dr. Breen really valued continued growth, both in self-development as a leader and administration. What 3 pieces of advice would you give to our faculty, staff, trainees who are interested in pursuing leadership positions?
It's hard to think of only 3 things, but okay, I'm thinking of 3 things. I already said one of them. Get involved early on so you learn how to handle yourself in groups, work as a team well first, and then learn how to work as a leader. And again, get involved at the intensity that you can manage. On a practical level, and never make promises that you can't keep, whether it be to faculty, to patients, to your family, to anyone that you work with. As one grows in one's profession, you have to learn how to say no. My husband keeps telling me, well, why are you still doing that? Haven't you learned how to say no yet? I have to answer, not very well. But you do have to learn how to say no and pick and choose what you can do well. And at the fine to listen, you don't have to talk, you just have to be a good listener. You can't be equal, but you can be fair. And once people know you're fair and listening, you be okay.
So great. And I am still working on the learning to say no as well. So I appreciate that. I know that we're running down on time. Maybe I'll end with one last question. When you hear about Dr. Lorna Breen and other young physicians like her, what goes through your mind, and what message do you want to give to other physicians and healthcare workers, regardless of where they are in their stage of their careers?
To me, and what I hope I instill in others, is the feeling, the knowledge, part of you that medicine is an honor. It is a great honor to be a physician. It's also a great obligation. It's not a way to make money. Emergency medicine is, we don't want you to go into that because you think you're going to make a lot of money. We want you to go into medicine because it's an honor and an obligation. Emergency medicine is a team sport. And from what I hear about Lorna, she has certainly exemplified how to be part of the team as well as how to lead the team. Most importantly, for this phase of life, for this phase of our specialty, for this phase of our careers. We need leaders. We need leaders of vision, enthusiasm, commitment, stick-to-itiveness, just like Dr. Breen. So we can do all that and carry her spirit forward.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. We really appreciate your time being here today and really helping us to celebrate Lorna's memory and her amazing accomplishments as a leader. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Tintinley, for those pearls of wisdom. And I just want to say a little thing about Dr. Lorna Breen as I present the Lorna Breen Leadership Award. Dr. Lorna Breen was devoted to her role as a leader, whether it was leading as a medical director of the Allen AD, advocating for an improvement in patient care, or honing her speaking skills with Toastmasters. On behalf of Dr. Mills, the Columbia University Department of Emergency Medicine Awards Committee, and the Dr. Lorna M. Breen Annual Lecture Committee, it is my great pleasure to present the first Dr. Lorna M. Breen Leadership Award to Dr. Edward H. Suh. Dr. Suh received his medical degree from Columbia University. He completed his emergency medicine residency training at New York Presbyterian Columbia Cornell and has been faculty and an assistant professor of emergency medicine since 2012. Dr. Suh was appointed the assistant medical director for the Allen Hospital Emergency Department in 2015 and has served as interim medical director over the past year. His focus has been on improving clinical operations, quality, and safety at the Allen AD. For his work, Dr. Suh was awarded Attending Physician of the Year in 2018 at NYP Allen Hospital, and he has been inducted into the Columbia University Academy of Clinical Excellence. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Suh as the first recipient of the Dr. Lorna M. Breen Leadership Award. And we have a ghost passing on the award.
Thank you. There's a generous description. I don't want to say too much, but I will say that any recognition I get is really a credit to Lorna's mentorship of me over the years. So I hope everyone will join me in considering this award really a testament to her leadership ability. Thanks.
Congratulations, Ed. Can't think of anyone more deserving. Congratulations. All right, before we get to our musical performance, I want to offer my heartfelt thanks and appreciation to everyone who's contributed to this event, our speakers, all of our special guests and performers, our entire planning committee, and all of you in attendance today. I'm deeply grateful to all of you who have contributed towards the establishment of the Dr. Lorna M. Breen Annual Lecture. We have a goal of raising $100,000 to permanently endow the Breen Lectureship and ensure that this event will exist in perpetuity, honoring Dr. Breen and advancing the conversation around leadership, professional development, physician mental health, burnout, and wellness. If you would like to contribute and donate in memory of Lorna, you can visit our website, which we'll make visible in the chat. Special thanks to all the donors whose contributions made today's event possible.